Okay, welcome everyone to another random walk down Mill Street. Tonight's topic has nothing to do with Rosh Hashanah, but it does have to do with this coming Shabbat. We're going to talk about Todot El venichוחי, which is a piyut that we sing here at Sheretz Israel. I don't think I'm going to teach you anything. At least for most of you, I don't think I'm going to teach you anything earth-shattering, but maybe a few things that you didn't know before. And we'll hear some melodies that perhaps you didn't know before. But this is all about a particular piyut, which we recite here at Sheretz Israel on special occasions. And the reason that we're talking about it today is because this coming Shabbat is one of those occasions. Parashat Nitzavim is the consecration anniversary of our Crosby Street Synagogue, which opened Parashat Nitzavim 1835, I think, something like that. And every year on the anniversary of that opening of that synagogue, we have what's called a consecration Shabbat. And that means there's a bunch of different customs that we observe to make the day festive. And one of those is we recite this piyut that we're going to talk about today, Todot El. Now, it's not the only time. We don't only say it on Consecration Shabbatot. We also say it on Simchat Torah, the morning of Simchat Torah. So we'll get that in this holiday season as well. If you've ever been to my home on Shabbat, you probably know that I like to sing it as a table song on Shabbat as well, during lunch especially, or dinner, but especially lunch. So that's when we say Todot El. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to do some singing, and we're going to listen to some recordings, and we'll talk a little more about Todot El. That's the topic for tonight. So here we go. What you see on your screen is Todot El, and it has a little instruction, the rubrics, as we would call it, that Dr. Poole gives for a consecration Shabbatot. This is the printing that appears in the daily and Sabbath prayer book, and so it has these stanzas. There are some extra stanzas for different occasions, as we will soon see. And I think you know the melody, and even if you don't, you probably have heard the melody elsewhere, which we'll also listen to. But I'm going to sing you the basic melody as sung here in Sheretz Israel, and it goes like this. Todot El venichוחי, tehilot nishmat kol chai, tehilot, tehilot, tehilot nishmat kol chai, tehilot nishmat kol chai. Now, in the synagogue, when you get to the end of each stanza, the congregation repeats. Does that mean anything, Roger? Are you telling me something? No sound? Anyone else have that problem? Sound, no sound? No sound. You can't hear me. That's a problem. Okay. Let's try something else here. Can you hear me now? Better? You can't see me? You can hear me. Okay. No problems. Okay. Let's try it now. Right now, you can hear me, Roger? Okay. Here we go. Okay. Todot El venichוחי, tehilot nishmat kol chai, tehilot, tehilot, tehilot nishmat kol chai, tehilot nishmat kol chai. That's the basic melody. Now, when this piyut is sung in the synagogue, at the end of each stanza, the congregation comes in and sings tehilot, tehilot, tehilot nishmat kol chai, tehilot nishmat kol chai, and the Chazan goes to the next stanza, shimcha or al teifen lecha totai, and that's the structure of how it's done when it's sung in the synagogue. So the Chazan says the text and the congregation repeats the refrain, which is Tehilot Nishma Kol Chai. As that's why Dr. Poole has these two little stars here to indicate that is what the congregation sings. Now, when we sing it as a table song at home, we don't have that same format. Everyone sings it together, and you just go from stanza to stanza. Or if you were the way my grandfather sung it, in between each stanza, so after you did Shimcha, you repeated Todot El again. So you basically make the song twice as long as it is, because each stanza gets the whole first stanza sung in between it, and makes the song much longer. Or if you do it like I do it, you just sing each one and you repeat Todot El at the very end. That's home versus the synagogue. Now you may know this melody, but before we talk about the melody, let's just talk about the text a little bit. It's a simple Hebrew poem. The Hebrew is not hard, and the phrases are pretty well known. But in case you weren't sure, I'm just going to read to you the beginning of Nishmat Kol Chai. This is a reshut. It means it's a particular type of poem that was designed to introduce the Shachrit. After the Zemirot, the Shachrit proper begins with Nishmat Kol Chai. And if you have a prayer book, it's page 183. And I'm just going to read to you the words without singing it so you can see the words. And I want you to look at the first stanzas of this poem and see where the words are repeating. Nishmat Kol Chai tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu veruach kol basar tifaer utromem zichrecha malkeinu tamid. So you have all these words repeating here in the beginning. Todot el venichochai tehilot nishmat kol chai. Then you have kol chai, right? Nishmat kol chai. Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu tibarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu yitbarach. So it's like we're echoing the actual prayer in this introduction. Tifaer utromem. You have titromam b'titnaseh melech ram b'yoshev gisei. All these words that come up in the Shachrit are here in this poem, or at least many of them. Not all the ideas come through. You don't have Al Tefa and the Chatotai. Don't talk about sinning or God shouldn't not remember our sins. You don't have that in the Shmat. But it's a pretty simple poem. I've tried to figure out why Dr. Poole, or where Dr. Poole gets the name of the author. He says that the name is Samuel. His translation is in the same meter, but the only place where you say Shemuel is Shin Mem and Aleph Lamed for Shimcha Al. I'm not sure how he knows that the name of the author of the feud is Samuel. I'm also not sure where this feud comes from. I was trying to figure that out. And I have not yet determined that. So we'll have to do a follow-up edition some other time in the future. Don't know how old the feud is. And I don't know who Samuel, the author, might be, or how Dr. Poole knows that that's the name of the author. All that given, let's go back to the melody. Da 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 dum bum 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 ba da 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 dum. You may know that melody from Adon Olam. Many people know it to Adon Olam. In fact, that's traditionally sung in the Portuguese synagogues of France. And here is a recording of it from our friend Daniel Chalfon.
Adon Olam Asher malach b'terem kol Yetzim nivra le'et nasa kehefzo kol Azai melech shemo nikra Azai melech shemo nikra.
So, how many of you know that one? You can raise your hand or nod, or you know Adon Olam. Do you know Adon Olam or do you know Todot El? Which one did you know first? I don't know. You'll tell me in the chat. So it's pretty clear to me that, and again, I don't have a way to prove it, but my working theory is that the melody for Todot El comes first and gets adopted into Adon Olam. I have a lot of reasons for that, but one of the main is because this melody is recorded pretty early on in written music, by Emmanuel Aguilar and David Aaron de Sola in the book Ancient Melodies of the Spanish-Portuguese Jews, which is published, I think, in the 1850s or 1860s in London. And here is the transcription in that book. And this is a slower rendition, and it has some idiosyncrasies, which we're going to listen to. Not perfectly the same melody, but in form, it has some distinctive changes, but mainly it's the same melody, and you're going to hear it here. This is sung by Jonathan Cohen. This is the way that it's written in the Ancient Melodies book by Emmanuel Aguilar.
Todot el venichוחי, tehilot nishmat kol chai. Todot el venichוחי, tehilot nishmat kol chai. Tehilot nishmat kol chai. Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu Yitbarach Tamid Malkeinu Veruach Kol Basar Chai. Tehilot Nishmat Kol Chai. Tehilot Nishmat Kol Chai.
So that's the earliest written music for it, and you can see that it's the same melody, even if it has some slight. I would say this written one is a little more elaborate than the way we sing it today, and the way most people know it. But because of the fact that I think that it's written earlier for Todot El, and Todot El is a more unusual piyut, I would say the melody comes from this rather than the other way around. Just an idea. A whole nother discussion could be had about why and how it spread the Adon Olam melody, especially in America, but it's done traditionally in France, in the Portuguese Sephardic synagogues of France. But it's also known in a lot of conservative synagogues and elsewhere in America, and that's a whole nother discussion for how that became popular in America, which we're not going to have today. Okay. Now, we sing it here in Sheretz Israel on these special occasions, but it's when you look at the older books, it has a listing of when it's supposed to be sung. And this is a 18th century Italian manuscript, so it's not terribly ancient, but it gives you a sense of the age of it and when it was being done in Italy. And it says, Reshut l'nishmat l'simchat Torah le Shabbat Kodesh Bereshit. So on Simchat Torah and on Shabbat Bereshit, they would say it, and Shabbat Kodesh Nisu'in, and on Shabbat when there is a wedding. So Shabbat Chatan or an Aufruf, if you might say, would get this special reshut for the Nishmat. I see some people don't like that I said the word Aufruf. I'm sorry. Aufruf is the Shabbat before a wedding in the German community. Shabbat Chatan is the Sephardic equivalent, which happens to Shabbat during Sheva Brachot, after the wedding. That's when it would be traditionally sung, during Shabbat Sheva Brachot. And you'll see at the end, some of the verses are different than what we have them. So this is the same. Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu, Beruach Kol Basar Al Tefen Titromam. But here you have, and something that we didn't have before, Simchat Chatan Torah Tivanu Tzor Nang Alahi Korban Nichochai Tehila Nishmat Kol Chai Tehila Nishmat Kol Chai. We would repeat Hi Korban Nichochai twice, but this is the same text that we use for Shabbat Chatan and for Shabbat Simchat Torah, but we say Simchat Chatan V'Kala, which happens to be what this text has for Shabbat Nisu'in, from when you have a wedding, Shabbat Sheva Brachot, Simchat Chatan V'Kala. We use this text for Simchat Torah, although here they would just say Simchat Chatan Torah, which makes a lot of sense also. And then for Shabbat Bereshit, they have Simchat Chatan Bereshit, Same words though, except here you have Yizkel Lirot Mashiach ben David, because it rhymes with Bereshit. Simchat Chatan Bereshit, Yizkel Lirot Mashiach ben David. Hu keben Yishai Chai, Hu keben Yishai Chai, Tehilot Nishmat Kol Chai. I kind of like that one. But the Shabbat Nisuin and Shabbat and Simchat Torah is the same. Tivanu Tzor Na'ala Hi Korban Nichochai. Same text exactly, just it changes Simchat Chatan V'Kala or Simchat Chatan Torah. Because it doesn't change the rhyme scheme. Now, if you want to hear how this is sung in Rome, or was, I don't know if it's still done, but this is a recording from the Spanish synagogue in Rome, not the Italian rite, not the Roman rite. This is from the Scuola Spagnoletto, or however it's pronounced over there, by a chazan named Nello Pavoncello, recorded in 1966. Oh.
Todot el chai venichוחי, Todot tehilot nishmat kol chai, Todot el venichוחי, tehilot nishmat kol chai, Todot titramam veditnase, Todot melech ram yoshev al kise, Lacheten kol shivachai, tehilot nishmat kol chai.
So we have a little bit different text, which I couldn't find online, but I'm sure I didn't look long enough to find it. But one of the things I noted was in the main refrain we say Todot el venichוחי, and then in some of these texts you'll see they repeat the word venichוחי. We don't do that in our version, but the Roman way of singing it was Todot el chai venichוחי, Todot el chai venichוחי, and you might hear that at some of the other recordings we're going to listen to as well. So that's the Italian, Spanish, Roman melody. Here you have, to show you that this is the same poem, same thing. This is an 18th century Northern Italian version. You have for Simchat Torah, for Shabbat Bereshit, and Shabbat Nisuin, just the same three occasions. Nobody talks about what we do here, which is a consecration Shabbat. And the same, more or less the same text. And here is another recording. I think this is a Greek recording. So I keep doing that. Here we go.
Todot el venichוחי, tehilot nishmat kol chai. Todot el venichוחי, tehilot nishmat kol chai. Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu, titbarach tamid malkeinu. ורוח כל בשר חי, תהילות נשמת כל חי. תודות אל וניחוחי, תהילות נשמת כל חי.
So this is a Greek, like a Balkans recording from I found on the Jewish National Library recordings. A couple things to note on there is that the congregation repeats, like similar to what we do here in Sheretz Israel. The Chazan says the text of the piyut, and the refrain is sung by the congregation. So I don't know if you heard that, but that's what they were doing there. One thing about this Ketav Yad, this manuscript, which is interesting, is they write out what's repeated. So they have venichוחי twice, which we don't do. We do Todot. We repeat Tehilot Nishmat Kol Chai twice, but we do similar to what this is repeated here. So we do Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu Yitbarach Tamid Malkeinu Veruach Kol Basar Chai Veruach Kol Basar Chai. He just repeats Basar Chai twice. Tehilot Nishmat Kol Chai. I'm sure that whatever this scribe was humming in his head resulted in what he repeated. Venichוחי, Basar Chai, Shir Shabbat Chai. It's not perfectly the way we do it here in Sheretz Israel, but it gives you a sense of what was being repeated, what the meter was, and how the song went. And finally, this is a later manuscript from the early 19th century. It's not so much later, but like 1820 or something like that. Also Italian, I think. And what I want to show you here is there's another verse that we haven't seen yet, and this is for a Brit Milah. B'mitzvat Brit Milah tzivanu tzor na'ala hu kekorban nichochai tehilot nishma kol chai, which is the same borrowing as this hi kekorban nichochai, but this is made specifically for Brit Milah. And so this would be sung on a Shabbat when there's a Brit Milah in synagogue. You would sing Nishmat with this reshut for Nishmat, and then you would add this verse at the end. Just to show you how this is not a very common piyut. So the fact that I found these recordings is kind of interesting because I don't know any communities today that really sing this. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm not sure of it because you don't hear about it too much, other than the Spanish Portuguese congregations. But here's a recording from Iran, which is very unusual because the Persian community is not Sephardic. So either they adopted this piyut at a later date, which is what I'm leaning toward, or it's really old. But if it was really old, then you'd see it much more widespread. So I'm not sure how this piyut comes to Shiraz, comes to the Persian community, but here is how they sing it there. This recording comes from the 1950s, made in Israel. I did it again. If I don't exactly click on it perfectly, I lost my share. So let me try that again. Okay.
תודות אליי וניחוחי, תהילות נשמת כל חי. שמך אדוני אלוהינו, תתברך תמיד מלכנו, ורוח כל בשר החי, תהילות נשמת כל חי. אל תפן לחטאותיי, ואל תזכור עוונותיי, ואשיר שיר שבחי, תהילות נשמת כל חי. תתרומם ותתנשא, מלך רם יושב על כיסא, לך אתן כל שבחי, תהילות נשמת כל חי. בשמחת תתן וקלה, במצוות ברית מילה, ציוונו צורנה עלי, כקורבן יוחי, תהילות נשמת כל חי.
So what the Chazan there did was kind of interesting. He sang this. He sang B'simchat Chatan V'Kala, then he immediately said B'mitzvat Brit Milah, and then he did the ending. So to use this because it's the same ending. So they to show that when they would sing it, same as the other communities as well. Okay, that's my presentation for you. If you want to hear this song, the melody is not so rare anymore, but the occasions to sing it are not that common. And here in Sheretz Israel, we actually sing it in its appropriate place, which is the opening reshut for Nishmat. Now, the piyutim like this used to be very, very common. And in fact, in some synagogues, they still are. So let's say in the German or the Ashkenazic world, you have krovot and yotzrot and ophons and all sorts of piyutim that were written for particular places within the Shachrit service or the Musaf service or the Kiddusha, where the poem is inserted into the regular prayers in a particular place. The reshut is before the opening of the Nishmat, and so the reshut goes before Nishmat Kol Chai. And this one, the words lead directly into it. We also have some other ones here in Sheretz Israel. So the Ashkenazim have a wide library of these piyutim that are meant to be sung on special occasions, but most Ashkenazic synagogues don't say them anymore. Only the real hardcore traditional German synagogues and a few others will say them. I think if you remember, I don't know how many of you live on the Upper East Side. If you go to Langeais, Orach Chaim synagogue on Lexington Avenue, they still say piyutim, krovot there. So that's one of the places you could hear some of them. Or you go to Breuer's. So that's in the German community. In the Sephardic world, we don't have that many, but we have some. For special occasions like this one, we have a Reshut Todot. Before Purim, we have Micha Mochas inserted into the Shachrit. On Rosh Hashanah, we have a whole bunch. On Kippur, we have a whole bunch that are inserted in various places before the Kaddish, before the Nishmat, before after the Amidah. So those piyutim are still said in our community here in Sheretz Israel in their proper place, meaning in the middle of the Shachrit. I mention this as unusual because many synagogues have stopped doing this. Either they don't say them at all, or they put them in a place that doesn't go into the middle of the Shachrit. So other Sephardic communities will take some of the piyutim from the middle of the Shachrit and put them after Shachrit or after Musaf, so that they don't interrupt the flow of the prayers. And I understand why they're doing that, although it's not original. So I kind of like the fact that we do it this way here. And that's what I presentation for you. I'm going to stop the recording. Let's take a look what this chat says. So thank you, Solomon. Came from Italy, Venice, 1627. I want to see that either printed or Tavyat. I'm curious to see that. And who wrote it? I guess someone named Samuel. But I want to find out more about that. So I'm going to call you after the class, Solomon, and find out more. Okay, that's my presentation for all of you.